What's the scariest thing you've seen on the highway? For some reason, I was driving through middle of nowhere West Texas/New Mexico late at night. I just moved to that region of the country. I'm driving along while my husband is asleep in the passenger seat when this giant thing comes crawling out into the road in front of me and scares the shit out of me. I scream, "What is that thing?" A split second before I slammed into it. My husband gives me this perplexed look and is like, "Haven't you ever seen a tumbleweed before?" "No, Brian, I have not seen a tumbleweed before." Edit. Why thank you for the gold kind stranger. That's a pretty wild experience. Sounds like a classic case of not knowing what to expect in a new area. Tumbleweeds can be pretty surprising, especially at night. I get the scare factor for sure, but now you have a story to tell. It's funny how simple things can catch you off guard when you're not used to them. Glad your husband was there to explain it. One early morning, about 6 a.m., I was driving with a friend on the highway in the twists and turns of a mountain valley. We were just having casual chat in the car. Nobody was on the highway at that time of day, and even less on this part of the highway. I took a quick peek in the rear view mirror and saw a car coming not fast, but fast. I tell my friend to watch out for the incoming car because I thought they were coming way too fast and wasn't changing lane to pass us over. At the very last moment, my friend kind of swerved a little toward the right of the lane and the car behind us hard swerved toward the ditch. The car disappeared in the deep ditch and reappeared, jumping about 4 to 5 feet in the air toward the highway at about 100 kilometers per hour with the momentum and back on the highway it was. Like it was nothing, the driver speed up and we lose him ahead of us as he was going about 140 kilometers per hour after the near-death accident. We were absolutely shocked and couldn't saw a word for like 2 to 3 minutes. We assumed the driver fell asleep and at the last second saw he was going to ram us and swerve toward the ditch. Shock probably made him speed up after the impact. It was crazy surreal because there was nobody else for miles around even after that. That does sound intense. Driving in those conditions can really bring unexpected moments. The whole situation with the car swerving into the ditch and then back onto the highway is wild. It's good that you two were aware and reacted quickly. It's scary to think about what could have happened if the driver hadn't swerved. Just a reminder of how unpredictable things can be on the road. Sounds like a morning you'll remember. One night as I was driving back home from work, it was about 1 a.m. There was a semi in front of me. The day was clear, but all of a sudden a fog rolled in, which was completely normal for the area, but something seemed off about it. As I'm passing through the fog, instead of water droplets, blood droplets were coming onto my car. I had no idea what happened. Then fur and guts started raining onto my car. Apparently the semi in front of me hit a deer, and I got caught in the aftermath of it. I drove home with bits and pieces of deer all over my car. That's a pretty wild story. Driving late at night can be eerie, and then you get fog mixed with something like that. Not a great thing to deal with after a long day. Must have been a shock to see the kind of mess on your car. Cleaning it up must have been a hassle. I guess that's just part of the unexpected stuff that happens on the road. Was driving to work on a Saturday morning down the interstate. I was in the middle lane, and I glanced in my side mirror and noticed a car catching me quickly. I looked over as it passed me, and in the back of this coupe was a lady banging on the window screaming for help. I sped up to them, and she noticed me and started screaming again. I got behind them and followed them and could see him reaching back and hitting her. I called 911, and he sped off. As I was talking to dispatch, I caught up, and he noticed me and realized I was following him. He moved over in front of me and came to a complete stop. At that point, I didn't know if he had a gun or what, so I went around him and exited. Once he went past the overpass, I got back on and followed him, but he eventually lost me as I couldn't keep up. Fortunately, I was on with 911 the entire time, and they had cops ready to pull him over. Eventually, they got him to pull over, and when I passed him, he was handcuffed on the ground, and she was sitting there. Come to find out, it was his ex, and he abducted her and was taking her who knows where. I followed them for around 30 miles, weaving in and out of traffic and going 100 miles per hour at times to keep up. Definitely creepy thinking of what he was maybe preparing to do to her. Edit. Thanks for the silver and gold. That's a pretty intense situation. It's good you were aware enough to notice and take action. Following someone that far must have been stressful. Sounds like a very risky move, especially not knowing what the guy might have done. At least in the end, it seemed to work out with the cops getting involved. It's unsettling to think about the possible outcomes if no one had intervened. Was driving to an ultimate frisbee tournament with a friend in NC, and my GPS routed us through some back roads, including this dirt road that apparently was a shortcut that cut off a decent amount of time. It went through a couple of larger farms, and at one of these we encountered a couple kids who were maybe 10 to 11 years old on dirt bikes. They waved us down and told us we shouldn't be there because it was private property. Kid got all proud when he went on to say, "My daddy shoots any trespassers that come through here." That was fun. I thanked him for telling me and kept on driving because it was a public road and we were almost done. Ended up finding out the kid was full of shit because his dad was working in the front garden when we went by, and he just waved to us nicely as we passed. That's an interesting detour. Kids can be pretty serious about their property lines. It's funny how they think they have authority. It's good you didn't take it too seriously. The dad waving nicely after just adds to it. Guess the shortcut wasn't as risky as it sounded. Overall, just another day on the road, I suppose. At least you got a story out of it. One time I was maybe 13 to 14 years old, coming home from a hockey tournament with my parents on the Capitol Beltway in Washington, D.C. In the opposite lane, I saw a car swerve, flip, and go over a bridge into the water. I called 911 right after I saw it, and the call taker said they had just received a call on it and were already dispatching. I really wonder what happened to those people. It was a memory I somehow partially suppressed, but I remember the car and what it looked like and how frightening it was to see it go over the bridge. That sounds like a pretty intense experience. It's wild how some moments stick with you. Seeing something like that can really shake you up, even if you try to forget it. It's good you called for help right away, though. Hope the people involved were okay. It's tough to carry memories like that, especially when they were so unexpected. A meteor falling out of the sky. It was like 10:30 at night. In my peripheral vision, I thought maybe it was a single firework because it was bright. I looked up and saw a bright green ball shooting across the sky. I was overcome with fear for a split second, and the thought flashed through my head, I hope I don't die right now from a warhead or a huge meteor strike. It fell across the horizon for what seemed like forever before it appeared to burn up. Turns out it landed a state away. No one got hurt, but it was definitely copper because it was glowing bright green. The 3 cars ahead of me had all pulled over, just as I did, which I didn't notice until I pulled back onto the road. It was seeing these other people witness what I just had that solidified what had happened for me. It was seen falling from the sky in the surrounding 3 states. This was in the Midwest. It landed in Minnesota. That sounds pretty intense. A bright green meteor can really grab your attention, especially at night. It's weird how quickly fear can hit you in a moment like that, thinking about potential dangers. It's interesting that so many people saw it too. It's nice to hear no one got hurt, and it's a memorable experience to share with others on the road. Makes you wonder what else is out there in the sky. I was driving a 2-lane road that runs through my little country town one winter morning at 5 a.m. to get to a radio show I was hosting. I'm doing like 60 miles per hour, and all of a sudden I look to my left and see a pale face literally next to me against the glass, driver's side window. Was seriously spooked and thought I'd seen a ghost. Looked in the rear view and nothing but darkness. I get to the radio station and couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. I decided to look up the local news and saw that a man had been hit by a truck at the same spot literally 2 or 3 minutes after I'd driven by. I quickly realized the face I saw was a man trying to kill himself by hurling himself across the road in front of my vehicle, but didn't quite make it. The next car driving the opposite direction got him. I called CHP and told them my story and asked them to tell the driver so he wouldn't feel as guilty knowing this guy had intentionally killed himself. Dude's truck was totaled, and I have no idea if CHP ever relayed my story to the driver. That's pretty unsettling. You were just driving along, and then there's this face next to you. It's wild how things can happen like that, almost like something out of a movie. The timing is eerie too. It's good you reached out to CHP. It might have helped the driver a bit. Just thinking about it all is heavy. Hope you're doing all right after that. My dad is from Louisiana, so we used to spend a few weeks in the summer there growing up. One night my cousin, brother, and I were night fishing for catfish in the middle of nowhere. We catch a few and load them up and head home. It is about 1 or 2 a.m. As we were driving out of the woods in the middle of nowhere, there was a group of about 30 to 40 people staggering around the road. These people looked really pale, and their clothes were all beat up and worn out. We stopped the car to watch them and to see if they would pass, but they just kept staggering everywhere aimlessly. So we started to move the car slowly in between them, but right as we got in the middle, they started to come at our car and try to get in it, and we floored it and got out of there. It was one of the weirdest things I have ever seen in my life. Probably some crazy cult or something like that. That sounds pretty strange. Night fishing seems like a chill time until you run into something like that. It's always unsettling when you encounter a big group of people acting weird, especially in a remote area. Makes you wonder what was really going on. Glad you got out of there safely. I guess summer trips can have some unexpected moments. I live in Colorado, so the roads can get pretty slick if you don't respect them. It was 6 a.m., I was heading out for school on the highway, and it had snowed a TO in the night before. At about 4 a.m., the plows had come through, but it was still dark, so whatever they didn't get made the roads miserable. Was chugging along going about 30 in a 75, just taking my time like everybody else, when on the other side of the highway, I see a crappy late 90s gray Honda just whipping by everybody. Obviously, physics kicked in, and this fool started sliding towards the guardrail, ricocheted off like a pinball, then went tumbling into the ditch on the other side. Slow down on ice, kids. Sounds like a rough drive. That car definitely didn't know how to handle the slick roads. It's always surprising how some people think they can just ignore the conditions. Slowing down is smart, especially in winter. Hope everyone was okay after that crash. It's a real reminder to take it easy out there, no matter how tempting it is to speed up. Safety first. One strangest, driving from San Antonio to Tucson in the late 90s. I'm on I-10 in deep West Texas, and I pull off to take a leak and stretch my legs. I got a late start and it's late afternoon. The wind is blowing fierce, and I look around. There are no cars on the interstate in either direction to the horizon, and just gravel to be seen in all directions. Eerie. I get back in the truck, turn on the radio. Nothing. I hit scan. It sweeps around the dial in circles, not finding anything. Like the world ended, and I'm the only one alive on the planet. No cars, people, radio, nothing but wind and rocks. Too Scariest, driving north from Tucson to Phoenix many years later. Drove stations into a hubbub, a massive dust storm. Visibility went from to the horizon to less than the end of hood of the car in 10 feet. I'd seen people drive into this dust ahead of me, but now had no idea what had happened to them. Slammed on the brakes and pulled to the shoulder immediately and waited. Eventually, visibility cleared. Other cars were stopped on the interstate ahead of me. The first story gives a real sense of isolation. Driving in the middle of nowhere with nothing around can feel surreal, like being in a different world. The radio's silence adds to that eerie feeling. The second story conveys a rush of anxiety during the dust storm. You made the right choice stopping. Visibility that low is dangerous. It must have been a relief when things cleared up. Oh wow, a thread I can reply to. I had just finished university for Christmas break, but I couldn't get a ride back until Christmas Eve. My stepdad drove 2 hours to pick me up at 6 a.m. so we could be home for August 9th for a family event. We didn't know we wouldn't make it, of course. The roads were fairly dead. It was winter, so sunlight was scarcely present, but it was just light enough for me to spot something incredibly pale sticking out of a garbage bag on the side of the road. I thought to myself, was that a human fucking leg? And my suspicion was soon backed up by my stepdad's. Did you see that? Did that look like a leg to you? As I said, the roads weren't busy at all, what with it being the earliest time of day in known history, and Christmas Eve, we actually pulled over and reversed down the motorway just enough to be able to see it. Couldn't make out what it was from where we sat, so my stepdad, who insisted I stay put in case there was a psycho on the loose, got out to take a look. He confirmed it, motherfucking human leg on the side of the road. All kinds of thoughts passed through our mind. Was it an accident? Was there a cannibal one drumstick short for Christmas dinner? We called the police, who got to the scene faster than I thought possible, and began asking questions. They sent us on our way eventually, and for days afterwards we couldn't find anything in the news about it. It wasn't until a month later that they called my stepdad to follow up and confirm that foul play was ruled out, but that leaves more questions than answers really. My stepdad thinks a medical waste truck may have had the locks malfunction on its doors based on the appearance of the bag. It was apparently very heavy duty, but I can't imagine how that would go unnoticed. This is a pretty strange story. Finding a body part on the side of the road is not something you expect. It's good your stepdad was cautious about it too. That whole situation seems pretty wild. It's odd there wasn't more news coverage after that. A medical waste truck makes some sense, but you wonder how it could happen without anyone noticing. Just a weird situation overall. I got lost and ended up having to take a back road to the highway in South GA. It was summer, but it was about 8/9 p.m., and everything in the little towns we were passing through was closed. We were in the middle of nowhere, not even traffic lights. We passed by an office that had been converted from an old house. It had big glass doors like a regular business. I looked over and saw an old woman in a white robe standing motionless at the doors just looking out. It was closed, so she scared the crap out of me. That sounds unsettling. Being in a quiet area at night can feel weird, especially when you see something unexpected like that. The old woman adds to the creepiness factor too. It's funny how a simple thing can catch you off guard in the dark. It's good you got through it without too much hassle. Nice story to share though. My uncle kept having dreams about him driving. In his dream, he would drive around this cliff area when he would come to this sharp curve that was unguarded on the side that was so steep that it basically ran to the bottom of the mountain. When he got to this corner, his tire would suddenly just explode. Same tire every dream. He would then have an out-of-body experience and watch his car drive off of the cliff, and he would fly out of the car and tumble down the hill, mangling himself the whole way down. He would then lay at the hill for 5 days without being found. And hashtag X200B. He kept having this dream for about a month. It awfully creeped him out to the point where he went to the auto repair shop to get it checked out. And hashtag X200B. It turns out that there was a flaw in the exact same tire that was blowing up in his dream that would have made the tire explode without warning. They didn't know how much longer it would have been, but they said that he was lucky that he came in when he did. The dream stopped after that. And hashtag X200B. A couple months later, he went to go visit my grandmama and granddad when he was driving somewhere very familiar. That's when he realized it was the exact same cliff in his dream. He stopped the car and pulled over and had stepped out to take a breather. He had taken the route before, but the cliff had never stood out before to him. Although our family is very religious, but he never really believed in it. But he swears that something out there is protecting him. And hashtag X200B. When he was telling me and my sister the story, he was shaking because it still scares him to this day. He truly believes that he would have died on that day. That's an intense situation. Dreams can feel really vivid, especially when they seem to hint at something real. Getting that tire checked just in time is lucky. The whole experience would definitely stick with someone. It's interesting how places can trigger memories or feelings. Sounds like your uncle has a lot to think about regarding faith and protection. It's understandable he'd still feel shaken by it all. As a kid, maybe preteens, I was headed up north on a family vacation. My brother, sister, and I were in the back of a truck with a covered topper. We had plenty of blankets, pillows, books, toys, and even a boombox to keep us occupied, plus a window into the cab that we could open if we needed anything. At some point, early in the morning while my siblings were asleep, I found myself just staring out at the stars against the black sky. That's when I saw something no one would ever believe. Not until years later anyway. A flash of bright orange lights lit up and zoomed across the night sky, intertwining and weaving about as they flew across my view out of the side window, vanishing almost as quickly as they appeared. I'd seen my first UFO. I was convinced. I was also the only one to see it. My mom said I probably was asleep and dreamed the whole thing, but I know I was awake. I know what I saw. I knew life existed outside of our planet, and I knew they were here. Years later, I was riding in the family SUV as we headed home from visiting family. Mom was driving, my siblings were once again sleeping when suddenly it happened again. The same orange lights flying across the night sky. Only this time, instead of a mix of wonder, excitement, and fear, I burst out laughing. My mom had just rolled her window down and flicked her cigarette out the window. That's an interesting memory. Seeing a UFO as a kid must have been wild, even if it was just the excitement of the moment. It's funny how perception changes over time. The second time you saw those lights, it turned out to be something so ordinary. Kind of a letdown, but also a funny twist. It seems like a mix of childhood wonder and reality hitting hard.